Hey, so I'm Michelle Caswell, and I'm the founder of Purely His, and now the founder of Purely His podcast. So I'm super excited to be launching my first episode, and I'm excited because my first guest is my super awesome husband. But let me just back it up a little bit and tell you why I wanted to do a podcast. So first of all, apparently I was doing podcasts before I even knew what a podcast was, because for 3 or 4 years, every single week, I was doing these episodes on Facebook Live, doing different topics, and I was interviewing people, and everyone was saying, you got to start a podcast, Michelle. I'm like, I don't even know what a podcast is. So anyways, we're officially starting the Purely His podcast, and my specialty is helping Christian women who have trauma get unstuck from that trauma and go on to live the life that God has called them to live. And not only has God gifted me in that area to know exactly where someone's stuck at and how to get them unstuck in a very short amount of time, but the way He raised me up in that and trained me wasn't through college. It wasn't through Bible college. It was through my own history. So I have a history of trauma from so many different areas, everything from sexual abuse to physical abuse. I have abortions in my past, divorces, single parent of 2 boys, and just the list goes on and on and on with the different things that I've endured to make it to where my story is very relatable. And what I always tell women is that your story is your authority. And so I'm going to show you how to do that by getting unstuck from your, past history and learning to live a life where your story is actually used to help other people. And so you'll hear way more about my story, and you're going to see lots and lots of stories, or listen to lots of stories of women that are relatable. So we're going to be raw and real and relatable, and hopefully you can get some encouragement for yourself and also get some tools on how you yourself can get unstuck. So my first guest is going to be my husband, Matt Caswell.
Hello, everybody.
I don't even know if I said my name. My name's Michelle Caswell. Did I say my name?
Yep. You introduced yourself. Yeah.
So we do have a full ministry, and when you have a chance, you can go onto our website and look at purelyhisministry.com. And then we're also on social media all over the place, from YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. So, and I don't know all the places that you're going to be able to hear this podcast, but it's going to be on all your favorite ways to listen and watch. And eventually these will be live, and we will have live guests getting unstuck right on the podcast. So basically you're just going to see behind the scenes what I already do. Like, I do one-on-ones all the time with women through Zoom or in person, and you're going to get to see the behind the scenes, someone confessing their trauma and actually getting healing right on camera. So it's going to be really awesome, and I'm excited to get into that. But in order for you to know me and who I am now, and just not my history, you need to know my husband, and you need to know about our relationship and how it started and how it's going. And when I was thinking about interviewing you, I was thinking about all the women that would be watching this. So I have a feeling that the women who are going to be watching my podcast or listening to it are going to be divorced, they're going to be Christians, and they're going to have a lot of trauma in their past, wondering, how in the world am I going to be able to not only heal from my trauma, but how am I going to have a successful relationship after all that I've been through? Mm-hmm. So I thought if you and I could share about what kind of led up to us meeting and us dating, and then our dating relationship up until getting married, and then kind of how it's going now. So I thought if we just had a behind the scenes conversation about that, I think it could really help my listeners to get hope, and also maybe get some tools and some encouragement, what could they do to be preparing if they want to be married to a godly man. So so I was thinking back to when we very first started talking. So we meet on eHarmony, and we're texting and we're emailing, and our very first phone conversation, I remember thinking, okay, we're going to have this conversation. And I remember you asking specific questions where you were wanting to know more about basically my testimony. Hey, what's your story? why do you have such a heart for these drug addicts? Why are you clean and sober? Like, what's the story behind that? So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to tell this guy what my story is. And I had already been sharing my story at drug rehabs and prisons and churches. I mean, I was sharing my story all over the place at that point. But the night that I was about to talk to you on the phone, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, I am so nervous to be able to tell this guy my story. And so I remember praying ahead of time, and I was like, God, I don't know where this is coming from, but I am so scared to tell him my story. And I think partly it was because you don't have the same past as me. And so that was a big one. But I also really liked you, and I wanted you to like me back. And so I remember talking to the Lord, and I said, Lord, I don't want to take it up a notch with this guy, and I don't want to take it down a notch with this guy. I want to be who I am, and I want him to fall in love with the real me. So I have to be honest here. I got to tell him my story. Not that I would lie, but I knew I had to share it with you. And so what I did is I was like, Lord, I'm giving you my heart. So there's no way this guy can break my heart, because I'm not giving it to him. I'm giving it to you, God. So here we go, Lord. I'm giving you my heart, and just protect me, because most likely he's going to reject me. There's no way a guy like him could fall for a girl like me. Mm-hmm. And so do you remember that conversation? It was really long, when it was like an hour long.
If not longer.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I was working like overnight at a women's rehab at the time. Yep. And this chair is squeaking. I don't know if you can hear it, but it is squeaking every time I move.
I don't hear it. Oh, I hear it now. So you got to be careful. So you can't laugh. Well, don't laugh during the podcast.
I can't talk with my hands.
People are going to think there's mice in the studio. There's no mice in the studio that we know of.
Yes, good.
But no, I remember that conversation very clearly, and I was nervous too. Yeah. So for the audience to understand how we began dating, yes, we met on eHarmony, and we were living on opposite ends of the state. She was living in Portland, Oregon, and I was living in Southern Oregon, and we met on eHarmony. She shot me a little message about she liked my profile picture?
There was a few things that I could choose from, and most of them were way too flirtatious. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
you went with a safe one.
Your profile makes me smile. In other words, you are a cutie, and I like you and what you have to say. But I had to tone it down.
Yeah, you did. You played it safe. But so she reached out to me and told me that my profile made her smile, and that's what initiated the conversations that we had. And so probably for the first 3-4 weeks, we were just communicating via email. If you guys remember what email was, we emailed.
People still use email.
We emailed quite a bit, and then we texted each other. But it was probably like 3-4 weeks before we actually spoke to each other over the phone for the first time. And I remember that really clearly because I was nervous as well. Yeah. As Michelle alluded to, we come from kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, she has a lot of trauma, had a lot of trauma growing up, and even in adulthood. One of the things that you left out in your intro when you're talking about your trauma is...
I left so much out.
You did, but the important ones, I think that it's important for the audience to know is that, first of all, you're looking at a walking miracle. This woman is nothing short of a miracle. What God did in her life is miraculous, but you would never know by looking at her that she's an ex-drug addict and an alcoholic. You didn't mention that, I don't think.
I think I did.
I don't think you did.
Well, this is like take number 3 or 4, so I might have said
you mentioned it on take 2, I think. but no, she also has that in her background, and I don't come from that past, and so we come from our pasts are polar opposites, basically.
Which I shared with you on that first phone call. Mm-hmm. So we get on the phone, and we're on the phone for an hour and a half, 2 hours or something. And basically, I gave you my testimony. And I even told you, like, the big, like, hard, scary stuff to tell you. Like I wasn't just promiscuous. I was a sex addict. Like, I even told you, the number of guys on that very first phone call. And I, like, for shock value, not just to, like, shock you, but to just be like, listen, if you want to run, like, run now, because this is what you're dealing with. So I didn't, like, I didn't tone it down at all. And so, and you were, like, very quiet, and you were just, listening. So, like, what were you thinking as I was, like, saying all that stuff?
It wasn't easy to hear what you had to say about your past. But what gave me the confidence in continuing a relationship with you, or at least continuing to get to know you, was that you had so much clean time and healing under your belt. You were clean, sober, and celibate for what, 5 years?
Almost
I think
6 years.
Almost
so
6
I was
years
only
at that
a couple of months away from celebrating 6 years. Clean, sober, celibate, serving Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. If you had asked me prior to that conversation if I would have ever considered dating with the goal to marry a woman who had that kind of past, I would have said probably not.
Yeah,
I just I wouldn't have been interested in dating a woman who had a history of drug addiction and alcoholism and promiscuity. I don't have that in my past, and I don't have. I've never dated anybody in my past that had that. But again, because you had worked really hard for those almost 6 years, it gave me a lot of reassurance that you were safe. Because it wasn't just me that I had to consider in moving forward in a relationship with. I also had children, and you had children, and we had our respective children that we had to consider as well. And so in looking for a prospective wife, I was looking for somebody that would be a good mom, not just a good spouse, but a good mom, somebody who is healthy, a Christian woman that loved the Lord, that would help me raise my daughters up to be godly women, that would be a good role model for them. And so because you had so much clean time, and because you were in a healthy position, I was willing to consider pursuing a relationship with you.
Yeah. And I also remember the other thing that you said, because at the end of that conversation, I was like holding my breath going like, oh my gosh, I thought for sure you were going to be like, nope, thanks, you're really cool and we really get along, but yeah, no, that's like way too much. But not only did you say the part about, listen, if this would have been, only 6 months ago and you had 6 months clean and sober, I would have been like, sorry. But because it's almost 6 years, that's a whole different story. So I actually feel like I can trust that this isn't something you're just doing for a short time. And then the other thing that you said was, it actually gives me confidence because of how forthcoming you are. You were like, I didn't have to like drag it out of you or pull it out of you. I was able to just get on the phone with you and you were just, here it all is.
You were very vulnerable.
Yeah. And that made you feel like you could trust me more.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You proved your trustworthiness on that phone call, because you didn't have to tell me any of that.
No.
You could have hidden it like most people probably would have.
Totally.
Or save that information for later on down the road after you'd gotten your hook in.
Yeah, exactly.
So to speak, using a fishing analogy there. But but no, you didn't wait until the hook was set. You were very forthright and transparent from the get-go about where you had come from.
Yeah. Well, and then from there, you made plans to come up and see me. So you were like, hey, I really want to come up and see you. I was like, oh my gosh. So then it's like, are we going to be attracted in person? Are we going to actually like each other in person? And so you brought the girls up to meet me and the boys. And, we got to hang out that weekend. And so prior to you coming up, I made sure that you were going to meet people that were going to basically vet you and make sure that you weren't a weirdo. Because I'm like, hey, this is my first time dating after all of this time, and I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I'm going to choose right. So I had you meet my mentor and my pastor and my mentor's sister and several different people. I don't know if you met
Family
my dad.
Members, yep.
Yeah, well, because it was 2 weeks consecutively. So I know that within a 2-week period, you met all of the most important people to me. And I told them all ahead of time, listen, I like this guy. I'm like gonna fall for this guy, but I need you to tell me, is there anything weird? Like, do you feel like God is in this? Is he godly or is he full of crap? And so I made sure that I set up people in my life that were helping me make the decision. I didn't want to just do this on my own. So that was really important to me. It was also really important that we made sure we liked each other's kids and, those types of things, that we got to see each other in the other person's environment. And so I know that was also really important. What did you think about me having you meet all those people? Did you know what I was doing?
Yeah, I had an idea what you were doing, especially when I wanted to attend your church that week, and you wouldn't let me.
Oh, yeah.
You did not want me to attend church with you that week, so you recommended another church where your mentor attended.
Church.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I knew that I was kind of under the microscope, and that you wanted to vet me, and you wanted the people in your life that were important to you to be able to meet me and give you feedback and report back to you on any red flags that they saw.
Well, I also didn't want you coming to my church and people thinking we were together, because I wasn't sure if I was going to go forward with you, because I needed to make sure that everybody in my life was like, yes, this is legit. I totally forgot all about that.
Really?
Have you forgiven me for that?
I forgave you a while back.
Oh, okay, good.
Just last week. Right?
So, because the second time, that you came, because you came up 2 weekends in a row. So the first time you came up, you brought the girls, and the second time you came up, you just came by yourself, and you stayed at a hotel. Oh, wait, do you stay at a hotel the second time or the first time?
I think it was the first time when I came up with the girls.
Okay. Yeah.
I stayed in a hotel, and then the second time it was your landlord.
Yeah.
That allowed me to stay in their guest room.
Oh, yeah. Which was the women's minister at our church and the elder of our church who were married. And so they lived downstairs. I lived upstairs. So you stayed downstairs. And with that, I just remembered that the second time you came up, because that's when we made it official. Okay, we're for sure going to be girlfriend, boyfriend. And that you saw me speak at my church. That was the first time you ever saw me speak in public. And so you didn't even know me that long. So it was only the second time you'd ever see me in person. And so what did you think of that? It's oh my gosh, here's this girl that I just started dating. I just got to know her and heard about her story and all that. And then you see me up on stage the very next weekend that you were there.
I thought it was really cool. Just from what I knew about your history, you were not only transparent with me, but you were willing to get up on stage and be transparent in front of an entire audience of people. And I know that took a lot of courage for you to do that, but my understanding is that wasn't the first time that you had done that you, prior to meeting me, you were living at a Christian ranch, and that you had become the women's minister there, and part of your duty at the Christian ranch was to go around and do speaking engagements and tell people your testimony and share with them about the ranch that you were living at.
Yeah. So so backing up about your testimony, because you shared a little bit about mine. So your testimony is, raised in a 2-parent home, and your parents had this loving marriage, and you grew up going to youth group and church on Sundays, and, praying for your meals and all that kind of stuff. Like, you had like a normal, like a TV family, like the only way I saw stuff like that was on TV. So you actually got to experience that. And through that lifestyle, you also have never been drunk, you've never been high, you weren't promiscuous, you led a completely different life than me. You don't have trauma, at least growing up type of trauma. You don't have any of that. And really the only thing from our stories that you could relate to me on is that both of us had 2 divorces before meeting each other. Mm-hmm. And that was really the only thing from our past that we could actually relate on. Mm. And so then when we meet, though, it's our pasts were completely different. But then we meet and we're talking, it seemed like we were the same. It was wow, we're in the same place now, going the same direction.
Even though we had come from different pasts.
Yeah. And so in that, and this, but it's all through dating you, because we dated for 9 months before we got married, 7 months before we got engaged, 9 months before we got married. And so with that, I remember always thinking to myself, how could a guy like him fall for a girl like me? I don't understand how a guy like him could fall for a girl like me. I kept looking at our past, and I just kept thinking that you were going to look down on me for it. I kept feeling oh my gosh, he's just going to be this is too much. I can't go forward with her. This is too much. I'm never going to be able to get over that. How did you work through that, as a man with someone with my past? Yes, that was some of my own insecurities or some of my own rejection issues that were coming up, during our dating time. But how did you deal with that? How did you get through that? Because that is a lot. Whether you come from your past or not, it is a lot to take on someone who has my type of history. So how did you work through that?
Well, first of all, the way you describe me, it makes me sound like I'm an angel or that I'm perfect, and I am not. I am a sinner that's been forgiven by Christ, and I've made my fair share of mistakes, but no, we don't share the same past. As you just told the audience, I've never been intoxicated. I've never used drugs. I came from a 2-parent Christian home. It was a very secure home. Mm-hmm. I have an older brother that was my best friend growing up. It was a very healthy environment to grow up in, and I was very active in church and youth group and Awanas, but I'm not perfect by any means. But to answer your question,
but in my eyes,
in your eyes,
because I was oh my gosh, he's literally perfect, and it's he's white and I'm black. It just was it felt so opposite. It felt
like we were polar
and I'm
opposites.
not really black for those who are listening by only audio. I'm white, but I just felt like it was so different, and I just kept thinking that how could a guy like you fall for a girl like me? So how did you work through that? Because for the most part, you were proud of me, and you would always give me accolades. I'm so proud of you. I can't believe you've overcome that. You would even feel bad for me. There were times that you would even cry over my past when I'm I'm fine now. I'm good. But how did you get through it? In some of those other areas?
Well, I remember, approaching our dating relationship with the perspective that, you weren't just a prospective girlfriend or wife, but you were my sister in the Lord, first of all. And that helped to give me compassion for what you had been through. But just the nature of our dating relationship being long distance, we really got the opportunity to know each other as friends before before we met in person. We had already become friends over the phone and over email, and I was impressed with what you had overcome and how healthy you were. And I remember making the comment to you that I was really surprised that in spite of all of the trauma from your past, you were one of the healthiest women, if not the healthiest woman that I had ever met. And so I was impressed that you had overcome so much and that you were as healthy as you were.
One of like the greatest compliments like ever. Well, that and the Proverbs 31 woman, which we'll talk about later. But anyways, so part of that, you would hang on that truth. Like, no, she's so healthy now. Like, so she's clearly like not that person. Because you've also said to me, like, I literally can't even picture you like that. I can't even picture like that you live that type of life, you know, the party girl lifestyle and just everything that goes along with it. Like I literally cannot picture it.
No, that was a surprise to me. I could not place you in that lifestyle in my mind. I couldn't. I did not have. I was unable to have this mental picture that you were once the person that you described to me that you were. As it was just. Yeah, you were not that person anymore, and I would have never have guessed that you had that in your past if you wouldn't have told me.
Which is what a lot of people say. They'll be like, "What? You used to be that? I can't even picture that." Which is just goes to show you like how much God can actually heal a person if they're willing to put in the work. Like I put in so much work in healing before I met you. Like a year and a half of drug rehab and, you know, anger management classes and abuse recovery classes and counseling and, you know, 12-step and just all the different things that I did to get healing, you know, forgiving everybody and repenting from all of my sin and just, making amends with different people. I mean, there was so many things that I did in preparation to meet you and become your wife. Like when I was in rehab, I had 3 goals, and that was I want to be married to a Christian man, and I want to be a good mom, and I want to be in full-time ministry. And so those were my goals. So anytime I had to put in that hard work of forgiving people or repenting or whatever, it was because I had those goals in mind. And so meeting you was like, oh gosh, please let this work out. Like, please let this go well. And it was crazy because, and we both have shared this, that at our age, because we met, you know, I was 35, you were 37. So when we met, it was very hard to find real Christians who wanted to date. And we define being a real Christian by actually being obedient to God. And so we don't drink, we don't do drugs, and we don't have sex before marriage. And so that was something that you and I were both committed to. Mm-hmm. And we're praying, please, God, bring someone who is like-minded. Because like, I don't want to go backwards. I don't want somebody messing up my testimony, but it's very hard to find a guy who won't have sex before marriage, especially because I have the past that I have. And you were finding the same thing with women. Women were just like, what's the big deal? Like, once you cross the line, you know, you cross the line of no return, how can you get that back? Mm-hmm. So was that like surprising to you that I was like-minded in that way?
Yeah, it was. We were just talking to one of the men from my most recent Purely His groups last night.
Yeah.
And we had talked about how when you and I were dating, before we even knew each other, I mean, just independently of our own, we had each created a list. And it was a wish list of what we wanted our future spouse to be and all the attributes that we wanted our future spouse to be. And for me, it was important to find somebody who, you know, didn't use drugs, didn't drink alcohol, which I thought was impossible. I just thought, you know, everybody my age drinks alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm a weirdo. You know, I'm the only one that I know of in my friend group or at work that doesn't drink. So for me to find a wife that doesn't drink, that might be something I might have to compromise. But I made that part of my prayer request wish list. You know, I wanted somebody that was going to be committed to purity before marriage because I had screwed up in that area before, and it didn't work out well. And I know that God did not bless that relationship, because I had sinned sexually. And so it was really important for me to if God were to bless me again with another opportunity to be married, I wanted to do it the right way, and I wanted to do it with purity. So that was another key wish list, for lack of better words. Something that was really important to me that I put on my prayer request list, and there were probably 20 or so different attributes that I put on this list. And I remember thinking to myself, this woman that I'm looking for does not exist. There's no way that she exists. But it was a mentor of mine that encouraged me to pray and ask the Lord for all of these attributes, regardless of how realistic I felt it was, and to test God in that. And so I did, and I put them on my wish list, or prayer request list, and I prayed for all of these attributes in a wife. And as I got to know you better, I realized that you were checking all the boxes. And I was like, really? Really, God? You heard me? I mean, that was like an aha moment for me in my relationship with the Lord, like an epiphany moment where it's like, oh, God, you're funny. You are funny. You do exist, and you do hear me, and you listen to me, and you brought a woman into my life that is checking all of these boxes. And what I would come to find out later on is that, not only did you check every single one of those boxes, but you checked boxes that I didn't even draw those boxes, but you had attributes that were important to me, and they were things that I didn't even put on the list.
That's good. Well, you already know that I think you're perfect. That's why I always say, like, my super awesome husband, like, it's so easy to be married to you now, but it was so easy to date you, other than my own dumb stuff that was like coming up, because I had healed so much before like marrying you, and so, or meeting you. I had healed so much, and I was just thinking, gosh, I'm going to be such a good catch for somebody. I'm going to make such a good wife, because I had unpacked my bags. I was healthy. And so, but then meeting you and dating you, man, the Lord like brought up, and you have rejection issues, like, and you still have some insecurities. You still think like he's too good for you. And so, the Lord was healing me throughout our relationship. And one of those things, it's like, because of my past in the sense of being promiscuous, I was like, okay, I know that I'm pure. I for sure am purely his. Like, I teach purity. I live purity. I live a life completely devoted to the Lord. But I was really afraid that addiction was going to come back when we had sex. And so, we stayed pure the whole time we were dating, even though it was extremely hard, especially once you proposed to me. Then it was like, oh my gosh, and I even remember telling you, like, I called you and was like, I can't see you until we get married. And you're like, what? I was like, seriously, I cannot see you until we get married. Like, why? I'm like, because now the thoughts are going crazy. I can't take my thoughts captive. I'm totally picturing it. I know it's going to happen. And my body is lit up, and I cannot see you until we get married. And you were like, oh gosh, don't worry. Nothing's going to happen. We've been good so far. I was like, oh really? Okay. So if I am totally naked, throwing myself at you, you're really going to be able to say no. You're like, yes, I will not let that happen. And so I remember telling you, I was like, listen, I'm telling you right now, if we have sex, I will not marry you. If you do that to me, I will not marry you. That will ruin my whole my testimony is going to ruin how I feel about you. And so, like, I can't see you till we get married. And you were like, I promise you, I will not let that happen. I was so scared. And so fast forward So we get married after 9 months of dating, knowing each other. Everything's going awesome. We're getting along. We're both healing throughout that because we had different insecurities coming up and different, fears coming up. And so we're long distance that whole entire time. And then it's the night of our wedding, and it's the true test. Have I actually healed? Like, am I actually pure? Like, is this, because from being a sex addict to now I haven't had sex now it had almost been 7 years at that point. And so
you were celibate.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I was really afraid that night. I was really afraid. It's just like, a drug addict, which I was, it's like putting a line of Coke in front of me and going, are you still a drug addict? And so I was scared. And so I remember, we're going to the hotel. And I remember being in the hotel lobby and we have our bags with us. And I was so freaked out. And you didn't know what I was freaking out about. But so we get upstairs and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be time. Even though we had said we weren't going to have sex that night, we were going to wait till we got to Hawaii because you wanted to be special and let's do it in a place that we've never been and take the pressure off of the first night. And so, we get up there and I'm like, well, I at least have to get naked.
I told you I was a weirdo.
And so, so I'm up there and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to drop my dress in front of him. It's first time him seeing me naked. And so I remember that, when my dress hit the floor, I still clearly remember it hitting my feet because, I took the dress on, bam, hit my feet. And I remember that immediately my hand shot up to my face and I was standing there with my hands glued to my eyes and I'm just standing there cracking up. I could not stop laughing and I was just giggling with my hands to my face. And even though at that time, I was 36 by then, I literally felt like I was 20 years old and no man had ever seen me naked besides you. I felt the most innocent, the most pure. I felt so young and I was in that moment, my hands were over my eyes and I just was it was a moment between me and the Lord, even though it was your moment because you to see everything. But I remember just totally just oh my God, I'm healed. Because I knew I was, but I didn't know I was. I wasn't positive until that literal moment. I was I am for sure a born again virgin. I am for sure completely 100% pure, washed white as snow. All the stuff I was teaching everybody, all the stuff I kept saying over myself, it was in that moment I was I'm for sure healed. And it's ever since then, and for the audience, not to say too much, but yeah, we didn't wait till Hawaii. So no, literally the best sex I've ever had in my whole entire life happened that night. And I so felt like the glory of God was literally in our room. I so felt like God's blessing was so full on our marriage in that night and just everything. I had never experienced anything like that in my whole entire life. And it was just the Lord, well done, my good and faithful servants. Because it was really difficult, all those years, but really difficult in our relationship, especially being so attracted to each other and so much chemistry, all that stuff. And so, and we've talked about that since, because of how we handled our dating relationship, and because it wasn't just our dating relationship, but it was the healing we put into our own personal lives, our own walk with the Lord prior to getting together, and then the way we handled our dating relationship, God's favor has been on our marriage. So now we've been married for 11 and a half years. In December, we'll be married 12 years. So lots of life has happened, over the last 12 years. So we won't get into all of that, but it's our kids are adults now, all four of them. We have 4 grandkids now, and we're living in our third house that we've lived together. We're fully out of debt. We've been running purely his ministry for, 10 years now. I mean, we've done a lot. We've had foster kids together. We've had, done all these huge events with Purely His. You've retired now, so you're a retired cop now, and there's like so many things that we have like done together. But relationally speaking, like how is it? Like, are you happily married?
Are you going to twist my arm?
No. You just say whatever you want to say. Keep it real.
Very, very happily married. And I want to go back real quickly to our wedding night, because that, you said that was like the best sex ever, which is amazing considering, the past that you come from. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's just, it shows you how much God blessed and honored our commitment to purity leading up to our wedding night.
Totally.
Because that night it was blessed, and we joke about it.
I wish you high five, but then it'd be
there we go.
Bam, like over the top of the mic.
Fist bump. Yeah. Top of the, wedding night was a great night.
Yeah.
And we even joke about it in Michelle's book here when I was helping her edit it. It talks about our wedding night.
Not everyone's going to actually watch this. Some people are only going to hear this.
So Michelle's book, one of her first books, is called Pathway to Purely His, Calling All Workers. And in it, she describes where she comes from and how the Lord healed her from all of that trauma. But what I was saying is, in this book, she talks a little bit about her wedding night, and I just want to correct a falsity that you gave our audience, in that on our wedding night, when you dropped your dress, what you heard wasn't your dress dropping to the floor. It was my chin.
Oh, your jaw.
My jaw dropped to the floor when I first saw you naked. But where were we at? Anyway, I'm distracted.
Now
marriage is great.
Being naked.
Yeah. No, marriage is great. We've been totally blessed. We set some goals in our marriage to become debt free. We were able to accomplish that finally about 10 years ago. We're not wealthy by any means, but we're debt free. And
well, no, we weren't debt free 10 years ago because we still had a mortgage. We don't have a mortgage now, and that was at
did I say 10 years ago?
Yeah,
I meant 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago we became debt free finally. Yes. But it's just a testament to how God has honored the way that we honor each other, and our approach to this relationship with purity and making Him a priority.
Totally.
He's
like our marriage
us.
Is purely His.
It is.
Our marriage belongs to Him.
And we're best friends.
Totally.
And a lot of marriages, unfortunately, spouses truthfully can't describe one another as being best friends. But you're my best friend, and I'm your best friend, and I'm honored that you invited me all the way out here to be your first guest on your first ever Purely His podcast. Yeah. Well,
like our relationship, not only are we like best friends like that, but we have a very funny relationship. We laugh like a lot. We're always cracking jokes. We have the same love languages. So it's like for people who are like into like the 5 love languages, like, we're both physical touch. We're both words of affirmation. Like we both are servants. Like our relationship is really easy.
It's
and it's
easy.
Not just, and I always am careful with this because I don't want people to go, well, it's just because I have the wrong person. It's like, no, it's not always that. Like, yes, I do believe that you're the right person. I'm the right person. But it's that we're both healthy. And so therefore we are able to have a healthy relationship. So I really feel like people putting in the time to become healthy, they'll be able to have healthy relationships. And so if both people in a relationship will unpack their own baggage, then together, putting God in the center, they can have a healthy, happy marriage and live happily ever after like we are. So I don't think it's just about finding the right person. I think it's about becoming the right person. So, and that's what Purely His does. We're always helping people get unstuck from the root causes of whatever their issues are, so that they can, first of all, become purely His, and second of all, be able to have healthy relationships with their spouses, children, whoever it is that they're involved with. And so, are there any last things you would want to say before we wrap up our very first episode?
I just want to brag on you a little bit more, if you'll allow me to. So,
well, if you do it, then I'm doing it back.
So, in addition to what she has shared, what you've shared with your audience about your background, one of the other things that you left out was that you were kicked out of the house when you were 14. You became homeless, more or less, but couch surfed after that.
I was staying with friends.
You dropped out of high school. You became a teen mom, and there was a lot of trauma that you were dealing with at that time that led you to cope with that trauma in unhealthy ways. But again, just a testament to how good God is, and how He restored Michelle to a healthy lifestyle, despite the fact that she became a teen mom, that she was a high school dropout, that she got kicked out of her house at 14. You went on and you wrote not just this book, but you wrote a curriculum for small groups or individuals. It's like a step-by-step curriculum to help people get unstuck from the traumas of their past, so that they could become healthy in the same way that the Lord had you become healthy.
Yeah.
Would you talk to the audience a little bit more about that book?
Well, the Purely His group curriculum, there is the how-to book, there is the leader's guide, and the workbook, and they're written for men, women, couples, or teens. So you can have a group where they meet once a week for 5 months. And we have incredible testimonies that have come out of that. Like, forever lives have changed. And it didn't just we started it in Oregon, but it's gone to quite a few different states now, and even a couple of different countries, which is so amazing. And so who knows what will end up happening with that. But yeah, I basically wrote down, this is how I healed from all of this. This is how I became the healthiest woman that you've ever met. And this is how, when I'm working with people one-on-one or in small groups, this is what I'm taking them through so they can heal the same way that I did. So, we believe in becoming purely His. And so taking biblical principles and how do you actually do those things? So we walk people through that. So, and then there's the second curriculum, which is the Purely His Vine. So when somebody goes through this whole group, then they can go on to do the Purely His Vine, which is another set of
the Purely His Vines. I think I have those right here too, conveniently.
You do have those. Interesting.
Amazing.
You're amazing.
Yeah. So this is the Purely His Vine series, which she also wrote. And then on the side, you also mentor women one-on-one. Can you tell the audience a little bit about?
So I do the one-on-one life coaching, and usually people come to me in crisis, as you know. So people are usually like, my marriage is blowing up, or I feel like committing suicide. I had an abortion that I can't get over. My kid needs to go to rehab. Whatever. I was raped. I never told anybody. I need healing from this. So I usually deal with those types of traumas and people who are in crisis, and I can meet with them over Zoom or FaceTime or the phone or in person if it does work out that way. But that's all available on our website, and and all of our other products are on there too. So.
And I just want to say that you are extremely gifted at what you do. I know that you're not going to brag on yourself, so I'm going to brag on you for you. I can't tell you the number of times I have heard people compliment you and tell you that they receive more help in one session from you than they did in years of therapy with a licensed counselor. Can you confirm that to be true? Like, how many times have you heard that? I can't count how many times I've heard that.
All the time.
And God has truly gifted you to be able to relate to just about anybody that you talk to. Yeah. I mean, any crisis or trauma that somebody is dealing with, you seem to have firsthand knowledge of it because of what God has brought you through.
Yeah. And
you are a miracle, and I'm just incredibly proud of you. And just want to say thank you guys for joining us. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close up?
No, I just want to thank you for being super awesome. And I don't just say like you're my super awesome husband just to be like nice to other people. Like, you know that I am very happily married to you, and I'm very thankful that you took a chance on me and that you gave me a chance and that you stuck it out with me, and you were just like so nice to me. Like, you've brought so much healing to me just with how you respond and how you like take care of me. Like, I had a lot of healing before we ever met, but through our relationship, it's healed me even more, and it's helped me to do the things that I've done, like writing the books or like doing this podcast. Like, you're literally like my greatest fan, my greatest supporter, my best friend, and I just love you.
I am your greatest fan.
I know, but I just really love you, and I'm really thankful, and I'm excited for like our future, because we still have we just made a new plan the other day that we're gonna like go on like a big vacation. Like, so we're like still setting goals, and we're still like talking about things we're gonna do in the future and how we're going to like, you know, set up our life. And so it's like not even over yet. It's cool.
Yep.
And I just love you.
I love you too.
And that's a wrap.
I guess we're wrapping it up. Thank you for joining us.
Yep. And we'll see you next time. So
be looking for Purely His podcast episode number 2 coming up soon.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Bye.